Welcome to our spoiler discussion of Avengers Endgame. And here we're going to be discussing in detail a lot of stuff that we didn't cover in our non-spoiler review. And we've got a lot to discuss here because this is one of those movies that, well, you can't really talk about without going to spoilers with.
Yeah, the non-spoiler was hard to get through.
Yeah.
Because really the movie, if you guys realize, it was not so promoted, and there's a reason why.
Yeah, and for good reason.
Yeah.
And so basically, this movie starts literally at the very end of Infinity War, in a different perspective. Because when it starts, unlike the other films where you do get some other movies that do a pre-credit sequence. They do the opening Marvel logos and stuff.
But for the most part,
they do that. But
and then they do that happy music.
Yeah. This one doesn't do that. It does it differently. It actually starts with no music. And it actually opens with we get introduced to Hawkeye, who we didn't see in Infinity War,
and he's with his
wife and kids.
He's got two daughters,
two sons,
and one daughter.
Two sons and one daughter.
2 sons, 1 daughter, and his wife.
Yeah. And it opens with him teaching his daughter how to bow and arrow.
Yeah.
And they're out their backyard and everything.
Yeah.
And this from the opening scene, I was already on the fucking edge, because it basically starts where he's teaching his girl how to bow and arrow and stuff, and you get this really nice, genuine moment with him and his kids and stuff. And then right when she goes to,
he turns around to his daughter,
and
you see the ashes.
Yeah.
You see the ashes from whenever they did the snap.
Yeah. And then after he looks around, he also notices that his wife and kids were gone on the other side.
The other son, yeah.
And he's looking around. He's like, "Where'd you go?"
He's yelling for their names and stuff, and then that's where it leads into the movie.
The movie, and already from the get go, I was already fucking like on the edge. I was like, "Oh my god, that's heartbreaking."
Yeah. So now we're led into where the last remaining people. Well, no, we get our introduced to Iron Man, who's been in space for 22 days.
Yeah, with Nebula.
And this scene, they go in great detail how skinny he was.
Yeah,
he looked like Christian Bale in Machinist in this scene.
He was lost a lot of weight,
and he's starving pretty much is what they were doing. They ate their last food, and he basically, you guys saw this in the trailer where he thinks he's gonna die.
He gives a message on his helmet, on his armor, or his helmet on his suit.
Yeah, to send Pepper because
because
he figured he was gonna die.
It kind of reminds me of a scene out of Interstellar, on that kind of same feel. And already from the get-go, the movie really puts you in this very bleak, very setting from the get-go.
Yeah, it's very bleak. And you see them eat him and Nebula are stuck together, so they eat that last little bit of food. And just when you thought, all hope was gone, you kind of tell, I was like, damn, is he going to fucking die already? Because I thought he was dead when we were moving. And next you see this bright light, and it's Captain Marvel.
Yeah.
And she picked his dead ship up and took it back to Earth.
Yeah. And then pretty much when they get back to Earth, we discover from the rest of the Avengers crew that Captain America, Black Widow, and all them, they see that Tony Stark is back now, and he gets reunited with Pepper. Which my only disappointment with that is that the fucking TV spot spoiled that shit.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that's just a minor nitpick because I wish it wouldn't have revealed that because it would have been a more impactful moment with them being reunited.
We see you.
Yeah. But it was still good to see them do that.
Yeah.
But when they reunite and then basically,
you got to think this is also the first scene we see with him and Captain America where they're not.
Well, they're not rivals.
Yeah, well, they're not rivals.
Since Civil War.
It's been since Civil War, believe it or not.
They weren't even.
It makes you think wow, it has been since Civil War.
Yeah, because it wasn't until Infinity War where he had to realize, let go of his, rivalry and save the world. So I'm glad that they had a reunion with this.
But they still have bitter.
Yeah, they still have bitter on calling the shots, things like that.
Well, they're bitter at each other still. They're still biting at each other a little bit. Iron Man does not trust the situation. Well, anyways, they go and they basically try to find where Thanos is hiding at.
Yeah, and then pretty much
Nebula remembers back when she was under his realm slave.
Yeah.
That he would talk about, if I ever do what I'm going to do, I'm destined to do. I got this place where I'm going to kind of retire.
Yeah. And it's a garden.
It's a farm. Yeah, it's called the Garden. Basically, he's going to be a farmer for the rest of his life.
Yeah.
Retire.
And then basically from the way they set
Marvel
it up,
sets in.
yeah,
Captain Marvel
comes in, and then they also get Thor, who's pretty much on like a depressing kind of state.
Yeah.
Where he's in fucking anger and how much he's pissed off at himself for fucking up with Thanos.
Yeah, because you remember he didn't hit him in the head, therefore he was able to go
the snap,
and he's really. He feels like he's guilty for not stopping.
Yeah, and they really dive into this really
well.
Oh
God, they dived in it really well. He's like, fuck. I mean, he is so depressed. It's like you feel like almost like he wants to kill himself.
Yeah,
yeah.
And pretty much they it seems like an easy task at first because they all get Tony Stark ends up, because he's still having to recover from himself, he stays out and they decide to get themselves together and go after Thanos, and they know where he's at.
Yeah.
So Captain Marvel says, I'm going to go kill him, and they're going to go, they end up getting together to go to space, and they end up taking Rocket Raccoon and Hulk with them too, Bruce Banner.
Yeah.
And basically they end up arriving there, and they realize, Captain Marvel realized that Thanos is the only one on this planet.
Yeah.
He's all by himself.
And they're able to hold him down, and this was a shocker. He cuts. Thor ends up cutting his head off.
Yeah, I was like,
and he goes, I went for the head.
Yeah, and at first he tells him that the stones weren't actually part of the plan. It was actually the plan was to destroy the stones so that in order to wipe out the universe.
Yeah, wipe out and restart it. Basically, he was like, give everybody a fresh start.
Yeah, and
unfortunately killing everybody.
Yeah, and then he also left him damaged in the process and nearly killed him.
Yeah.
And this, at first, it seems like they've pretty much won because they after Thor kills Thanos, they end up going back to Earth, and we actually get something we haven't seen. I don't ever think in a fucking Marvel film. They actually time jump 5 years later, where the whole world.
Yeah, it's just abruptly, at first I was kind of like, damn, that's kind of rushy type. I was like, I'm not getting what they're doing.
Well, and plus also after this, pretty much Captain Marvel ends up. Well, no, I'm sorry. We get to the next scene with that. Basically, it picks up 5 years later, where Earth is basically in ruins because of all the damage.
If you guys seen Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, it looks like that.
And the way it's set up, it really puts you in the mindset of it being very bleak.
Yeah, with all the trees
and all the crumbled buildings and stuff,
and the trees growing with,
and all the animals are pretty much gone. There's no resources. Everything is gone.
Yeah, everything is gone. Resources, everybody, and all that stuff.
And already we're seeing Captain America, Steve Rogers, going to these group meetings and stuff where he's talking about how we all have to move on and things like that. And this becomes a great plot point about himself because Captain America has a story arc that we'll get into later that really takes a really deep impact for him.
Yeah.
And while this is also happening, Black Widow is telling all the other members of the Avengers, Captain Marvel and all them, about them trying to look for trying to find the outskirts of trying to basically gather the stones in a way.
Yeah.
Or try to find ways to, look for the rebuild society, rebuild the world.
Yeah, and then they realize they can't. The stones were the only answer until we get the scene with Ant-Man suddenly come popping out of the truck.
Well, before that, Captain Marvel, this is something that I do feel like you were saying in our other review, that she just abruptly just leaves, and she's gone for the rest of the film. She just says that she has other matters to attend to with other universes, so she has to leave. And then basically after that, the rest of the film, she doesn't come back for a while.
Yeah, so we get the next scene with Ant-Man coming in the mix, and basically, if you guys remember in Ant-Man and the Wasp, he was stuck in the quantum realm, and that's at the same time when Thanos snapped his fingers, which left him stuck. And basically, he's been trying to get out for 5 years.
Yeah. And then pretty much when he gets out, he's in shock at all about what's everything's going on.
Where's everything out?
And
I will tell you, this scene really, really was shows you detail what Thanos really does, because he's looking around. You see this crumble apocalyptic world, and then you see this one big ass field of nothing but cemeteries, and it's names of pretty much everybody in the world. Yeah, vanished and stuff. He's freaking out thinking his daughter's gone.
Yeah.
And then he ends up finding her
all grown up.
Which I will say that it's cool to see that and see her, but it's weird also that they really don't go back to her.
Yeah, because it would be like I think it probably would have been a little bit more impactful if they probably would have established that she probably died and that he had to bring her back. Because in the trailers, I kind of thought they were going to do that, where because he looks at this kind of poster about people that are missing stuff, and I was like, okay, that seems like his daughter probably got killed.
Yeah, that would have been better arc if she was dead.
Yeah, and he has to bring her back
because really you kept her alive, and he's hugged her. He's like really in happiness. But then he trusts to leave her by herself. Yeah. Doesn't even go into even detail if she's the mom and them's alive.
Yeah.
So it's like you just see the daughter, and it's really you never see her again. It's like, okay.
Yeah, it could have been a lot better elaborated with that. Yeah. But then we get it pretty much while this is going on. While they're Ant-Man ends up going to the Avengers, because he remembers with the Civil War that happened. And he ends up having to tell him that there's a way to pretty much try to start everything over by using it's quantum physics that have a way to go back in time.
Yeah, and he has these little formulas. He has to have them for them to do it.
And they end up going.
And they only have enough. They only have enough just to do like a certain amount. So this is where we get into our middle of our plot, where pretty much we're going back to our old films.
Well, before that, the lead up to this is that in order to them successfully do this after they test it, because at first they're in order to do it, that they try to get help from Tony Stark. Yeah. After 5 years pass, and
5 years pass,
we actually see that he has a daughter now.
He has a daughter. Him and Pepper. He actually leaves the Avengers because of that. Him and Captain America were bumping heads, so he just went on his way. And it's 5 years later. And he hadn't spoken to him in that long, and he has a daughter now.
Yeah,
and everything. And living out in the woods, cabin in the woods.
Kind of reminds you of Hawkeye. And basically, they end up coming to him, and Tony Stark says, "No, there's even if it was possible, it's too risky, and he doesn't want to do it." And I can see that, like they really build on they not only build on him, having to trying to make the right choices in this film, but they also call back to the earlier films when because remember in the other films, Tony Stark had to make all those choices like on his own and stuff. Yeah. Now he's really questioning himself, like, I can't make the same choice like I did before.
Yeah, because the defeat was just too great.
Yeah.
And not only that, while that's going on, they're trying to do their own ways, but then like they're really needing somebody. Tony Stark's brain. They need somebody smart. But he looks at it. You can kind of tell he doesn't want to do it, but then he sees Spider-Man's picture.
Yeah. And that was very heartbreaking.
And that's like a son to him.
Yeah. And then pretty much since they can't get Tony Stark, they end up going to Bruce Banner, who 5 years later has found a way to basically combine himself with Hulk by becoming Professor Hulk.
Yeah, where he's half Banner, half Hulk.
He's a hybrid.
Yeah.
And basically he tells them that there is a way to do this, but it's very tricky in that it's basically, it's once in a lifetime. And so their plan is to try to test it out and see what it does.
They split up in groups. They go like...
Well, before that, they do these little tests, which I'll admit, this is where the humor kind of really started to kick in, where they start doing these tests with Ant-Man, and each time that he goes back inside, he starts becoming a lot like younger or older.
Yeah, but whenever they get Iron Man, who wants to come and help out too, that help join them and stuff, because, he feels guilty and he feels like he needs fixed. You also get... where we find where Thor's been hanging out for 5 years.
Yeah, which is called New Asgard.
New Asgard, and it's just like Irish town.
Kind of reminds me of the town from that
Scotland or Ireland.
Yeah, at first I thought they were going to do kind of like like they were taking a inspiration from Man of Steel, because it was at like a shipyard and stuff. I was like,
well, you know what? I don't want to put my girlfriend on blast on that one. I'll tell you after this, because I don't want to embarrass her. But anyways, it's funny as shit. I was like, looked at her and like, oh my god. Well, anyways,
they go to him and they realize that this is also a scene where we get to see Valkyrie, that she survived, and because if you remember in Infinity War, all of Thor's people, we never figured out what happened to them, and apparently they survived.
Yeah, they Ragnarok really left us hanging on the Valkyrie.
They did, because they were selling that ship. So we actually found out they survived on from that planet.
Yep.
And they go to Thor, and Thor is pretty much becoming so like overweight and everything, and drinking and stuff, and
not giving a fuck.
And he later is referred to as the Big Lebowski, the dude from the Big Lebowski.
Yeah.
And they end up coming to try to get him to take down Thanos, and
he freaks out.
He freaks out, and he starts,
like,
I killed him, and there's nothing I can do to get there. And then Rocket Raccoon's there to try to negotiate with him, like, well, we got beer, and there's like,
what kind?
What kind?
Yeah.
So,
he Thor plays an overly dramatic comedian who just doesn't give a fuck drunk.
Yeah.
Which was kind of odd to see. And while it works at some places, it does get overly drawn.
Yeah, it does. That is the thing that I noticed throughout the movie.
Yeah.
But they pretty much get him to go along, and then they end up going back to the Avengers initiative. And while this is happening, we also get Black Widow also looking for a Hawkeye because he disappeared, and he apparently has taken the form of Ronin, and he's going around killing people to try to get out of spite of losing his family.
But he's killing henchmen, bad people.
Yeah,
and he's taking out his anger out on bad people, which I have no problem with. My problem with this scene right here is Ronin apparently is a big deal. And I can see why they wanted to find some spot for it. The issue lies with he goes from Ronin, and we really don't know the transaction of why he turned into Arrow.
The transition of
Hawkeye,
him doing, it's really
damn, that was even pointless to even do Ronin.
Well, because we have Black Widow show up after he kills this dude, which they actually got away with showing a dude getting his throat slit, and we see the aftermath of him, slicing him.
And another thing I want to bring up too is there's a big build-up story arc of him becoming Ronin.
Yeah,
it's almost like a League of Shadows type thing.
Yeah,
and they literally don't go into
they cut it
at all. They cut it completely out.
Yeah. So that is something that I wish they could have had more build-up for.
Yeah,
but
in fact, I would have loved that he stayed Ronin.
Yeah,
because that's what I assumed. I thought Hawkeye pretty much died with everybody else, so he turned into Ronin.
Yeah, but he pretty much gets talked to by Black Widow, who wants to tells him that it's not going to do anything to bring him back, so we have another way to try to do this. Mm-hmm. And basically after that, he ends up joining her after that, and that's when pretty much they decide all together, including Tony Stark, that they have a way to go back in time.
Yeah. And so everybody gets their own jobs. Like one goes to 2012.
Yeah, this is where the most interesting part of the film comes to play. We actually get them they actually have a way to go back in time to different periods of the other films. Yeah. So it takes a spin like similar to Back to the Future Part 2, where they actually relive events that already occurred in previous films.
And also they also fix a lot of plot holes in those films as well.
Which was very good because some of the problems that lied, like in Avengers Age of Ultron, Thor, The Dark World, and things like that, a lot of those films, they actually revisit and actually, fix some certain things.
Relive some.
Like you actually to see the first Avengers in 2012 actually relived in when they go back in that time period.
And it's like Back to Future 2 where they got to avoid each other.
Yeah. And then you also got them going to revisit Thor 2, where we get that really emotional scene where Thor visits his mom, and he's telling her she actually knows that he's from the future and everything, and
like she doesn't want to know her fate.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it arrives on the day she's actually killed in the movie.
Yeah. Yeah. So and then the 2012 part deals with them having to get the Tesseract, which if you remember was by Loki, and when they capture him, they put him in this box. And then what's interesting was that not only did they combine the first Avengers film, but they also included a plot elements from Captain America: The Winter Soldier because they bring in that one. Yeah, they bring in that one dude who's part of the Shield Initiative who turned out to be Hydra.
Yeah.
He ends up having to take the Tesseract, and we get that elevator scene that you remember from Captain America: Winter Soldier, where Steve Rogers is, instead of him
sitting in the middle.
Yeah, he's sitting in the middle of them. And basically, instead of him fighting all the dudes, he just says, "Hail Hydra," because he knows their secret.
Yeah, because you remember that same scene whenever he didn't know that and wouldn't say that, then they knew he was a bad
I thought that was pretty cool to get a spin on it with that. Yeah. And then he ends up leaving there, and then What's also interesting, this ties into it, they also bring back Pierce, Robert Redford's character from that too, because he comes in trying to get the Tesseract. So it's almost like if the Avengers had a deleted scene, it's like that scene played out in this movie.
Yeah.
Because it's weird. Because they're literally, the dialogue they have with Loki after they capture him, it follows that with scenes leading up to the rest of that movie.
And it also gets really up there with, like, you get the, example, you get a scene where they start fucking up when they do go on these, like, trying to change the future. Like, Ant-Man accidentally bumps where Loki was able to take the Tesseract.
Right. Yeah, and so he ends up actually leaving and actually going with the Tesseract.
And then you get another scene where Captain America actually walks into his own self and they get a fight.
Yeah.
And they think it's Loki looking like him, and they get into a fight until he's able to convince by key words. And then you have also Robert Downey Jr., he runs into his father, which is kind of cool.
Well, that's a little later, but while this is also happening, before we get to that, we also have another time period that they go to where, if you remember, well, in this one, Rhodey and what's her name? Nebula. They go together to that planet from the beginning of Guardians of the Galaxy. So they actually relived that movie's timeline in 2014.
I knew they were going to
because I recognized that planet in the music.
Song.
Yeah,
that's the first movie.
Yep.
And then they actually they knock his ass out.
They see Star-Lord there and they beat him out.
Yeah.
And they end up. While this is happening though, they do a spin on this in each timeline because they're looking for the stones in each timeline, and there's basically in this timeline they go to in 2014, Nebula has this thing in her memory implant that ends up getting synchronized with her own self in that timeline.
Yeah, because you guys remember when she was under Thanos' orders, anything she could possibly think or see or whatever automatically gets stored in there and gets played so Thanos can see if she's going to backstab him. And unfortunately, the brain of her past and present are synchronizing together, and then it's able to show Thanos that, hey, there's another dimension where you actually did snap your fingers, but you also got beheaded and killed.
Yeah.
So he's like, oh, hell no. They're trying to come back for revenge.
Yep.
Change my fate.
And this is also where we get to see Gamora again, who at the time was still under the influence of Thanos.
Yeah.
And so he ends up coming up with a plan to try to get her, the future Nebula, or the past Nebula, to try to, get a hold of the future Nebula.
Yeah, and go undercover to pretend that you're they're
future.
Good, you're good, so you can go and find out where the Avengers are, and you're able to sneak out to Thanos what they're doing, what their plans are.
And then while this happens, after their plan fails in the 2012 timeline with the first Avengers, Tony comes up with a plan to try to go back to an earlier time period when his dad was still alive. Yeah. And this is back in 1970 where we get that. Well, first we get that cameo, which, may he rest in peace, Stan Lee's last cameo, where he's the guy
love, not war.
Yeah. And he ends up going to see this army base, and they have to take the time things, because Ant-Man's plan was that he only has so many time those little serum things, whatever, to go back in time to go in the quantum realm. And so basically their plan is to get the rest of those that Hank Pym was still creating back then.
Yeah, because it's pretty funny because you got Tony Stark's dad working and running this facility, and happen to know that Michael Douglas's character is working there too.
And they made him a lot younger than his earlier self in the first Ant-Man.
Which actually looked pretty good.
Yeah, because he was set in the 70s. And then you also get to see Tony Stark's dad, Howard Stark, again.
Yep.
And basically he runs into him after they get the stone they needed, or the time thing they needed. And we have this really genuine, very heartwarming scene where he's talking to his dad, and he's having to tell him that the undercover
father.
Yeah, and he tells him his name is Howard as well.
Yeah,
and they're talking about how he's about to have a son and stuff, and he's like,
which is Tony.
Yeah, yeah. And pretty much it's just it just really, it really grabs you by the heart.
It does, yeah.
And
despite some drag.
And also, what's really, this is a big foreshadowing here.
Very little.
Steve Rogers, while he's also getting the other stuff going on, he also sees Peggy's working there too, from the Captain America films, and
which he wants to say something, but
he's afraid because it was contradict the time period.
Oh, it would have destroyed it because if you think about it, way back, she knew he died.
Yeah,
by freezing to death.
Yeah, so
from crashing. So she was like, that would have fucked everything up. If she would have saw him. So
yeah.
He had to leave.
So they end up leaving, and then pretty much they go back to their time periods, and basically, while this is all happening, Thor and Rocket Raccoon, they leave from their time period after he has that genuine moment with his mom and everything, and then Nebula, after she gets captured, she ends up, the bad one from the past, ends up going back with them in the current timeline.
Yeah.
And then basically, they all have to work together, and then basically have a way to, since they all have the stones, they make the new glove, which is basically the new gauntlet that Thanos had with all the stones. And this time, the only person that can do it is someone that can form it.
And form it, and now with that, after testing it, Hulk almost died from it. And basically, they said anybody that's not Hulk will die from it.
Yeah. And so they end up using it, and then pretty much, out of a miracle, everything gets restored. We see that for a brief moment.
Well, you also forget they had to get the Soul Stone.
Oh, that's what I'm saying. Okay, just before we get to that. So, pretty much, before we get to that, we get one of a very emotional scene here.
Mm-hmm.
So, Black Widow and Hawkeye have to go to that place. If you remember in the Infinity War, Thanos had to go to that location in what was it called? The Warrior or whatever it's called. But basically, it was the place where Red Skull turned out to be at.
And he's the one that's guarding the
Soul Stone.
Soul Stone. And unfortunately, we knew something was coming. Hawkeye and her are by themselves, and one of them's got to make a sacrifice.
Yeah.
It's the only way to get the final stone. If not, they know that Thanos is going to relive it anyways and kill Gamora.
Yeah, and so they have to pretty much make the ultimate sacrifice. At first, they're fighting each other, and then Black Widow makes the ultimate sacrifice and ends up letting herself go. And I'll admit, that scene really fucking got to me.
I know. It's weird. I didn't predict.
I didn't think that would happen. Seriously, because they've already announced they're going to do a Black Widow movie coming out. So it made me think, okay, maybe that's going to take place after this movie. No, that's probably going to be a fucking prequel.
Yeah.
So much like the other movies we've had, that's probably going to be another prequel.
Yep.
So this one, it really got to me. And so Hawkeye, we get that really emotional scene too, where he's fucking crying over her and everything. Mm-hmm. It's really emotional. He ends up going back, and then when they all have to form together, that's when we get that scene where Hulk ends up using the gauntlet. He restores humanity, and basically everyone actually comes back.
And
we don't see everyone yet, but for a brief moment, you can see that the animals have come back and everything.
Yep.
And humanity is restored. And then it goes to shit as soon as we find out that Thanos had a way to get a hold of Nebula and get access to figure out what's going on.
Yeah, and find the Avenger building.
Yeah. And use the time travel in his timeline to go back in time to the future.
Yeah.
And basically he ends up showing up, and that's when all fucking hell breaks out.
Oh my god.
And then Thanos, he's in his armor again, and he's starting to beat the shit out of all the Avengers.
Oh man, dude, he is kicking the fuck out of them, man. And they get to this, we get the scene where you got Hawkeye, Raccoon, all them, they're all under the rumbles.
Yeah.
Captain America is trying to fight him off, him and Fat Thor.
Yeah,
from drinking.
And Iron Man.
And Iron Man, and they're just getting their asses fucking beat. And we actually get this, which was kind of a shock right here, but it's kind of cool, is where you get Thanos break it, keeps punching his shield and shatters it.
Yeah. And then he's almost at his last breath, where
he's bleeding
everywhere. And then that's when, right at the last moment, something comes that we had probably one of the biggest money shots of the fucking movie, and it was one of the best moments of the entire film.
Yeah.
We get the scene where, as predicted, everyone in the universe comes to join the fight that has been revived based on
Spider-Man,
Spider-Man, the Guardians of the Galaxy.
Aside from Loki, Gamora is a different Gamora.
Yeah, she's still in the previous timeline.
The Gamora that we're used to is already officially dead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we get everyone come back, and I leaned over him, and I was thinking to myself, like, it would be really cool if they had the rights. That'd be really awesome if they had all the fucking X-Men join them there and everything.
Yeah, because Thanos eventually, before they come in, Thanos calls for his
army to show up to devastate the world.
Yeah, and basically tells them, after I kill you, I'm gonna destroy every little atom in this world.
Yeah. And then pretty much we get this all-out war that takes place between everyone in the universe. Everyone's back. Doctor Strange, Black Panther, everyone. Yeah. And they start going balls to the wall, fucking the most epic conclusion that you'd expect in this movie. Yeah. And they really do pull it off. Like, every scene is just gold. Like, they're kicking ass, and you're seeing fucking Thanos just start stomping motherfuckers left and right.
God, dude. Like, not only that, you get that tense scene with Thor and him, where Thor had that axe.
Yeah.
And you see a part where Thanos is pushing in his chest like he did.
Almost about to kill him. And then that's when the last moment we see Captain Marvel comes in, and she ends up fucking like fighting him too. And at first I was skeptical. At first, just worried going in, like, please don't do what I think they're do. They eventually do. They actually were able to outweigh her strength with Thanos and actually show that Thanos, while Captain Marvel is strong and able to fend off her guard, Thanos actually has it to where she fucking punches her like way up in the fucking with the power stone.
And he used a power stone. He hits her so hard she flies to another universe, and it isn't really seen other than the funeral part.
Yeah. And then pretty much after that, it's all led to the
big final climax
between
everybody
and everyone else, and pretty much the stone is like going like from place to place, like different superheroes.
Yeah,
and
they're
stuff.
trying to hide it from Thanos putting it on his hand,
and pretty much we get the final call where Thanos ends up putting the glove on, and he ends up trying to snap his fingers. It doesn't work, and then he realized that Tony Stark has the gauntlet on. And
Iron Man.
And he says,
Iron Man.
Pretty much devastate. Well, Thanos says, he's like, I am inevitable, and then he snaps his fingers to try to do devastation again. Doesn't work, and now this time we see the most emotional scene out of the entire franchise. Iron Man has the glove on, and he makes the. If you remember from the first movie, he said this closing line, "I am Iron Man." And he snaps his fingers.
And
then all the fucking bad guys just evaporate.
Everything.
Even Thanos in the end.
Thanos, he sits down in disbelief that he's lost, and he starts disintegrating.
Yep.
And then unfortunately, if you guys know that, basically he's the only one that can use the gauntlet.
Yep.
So we get oh my god, this scene is hard to watch.
It is.
He's halfway burnt.
Yeah, he can't even talk really.
He can't talk, basically, and we lose.
I'll admit,
Iron Man, our star.
Mm-hmm. I actually was crying.
Yeah,
this movie, this scene right here was very so emotional, and it was. We went a long way starting from 2008 with Iron Man, and this to me is the best sacrifice that they have done in this franchise. That was needed for this,
especially when Spider-Man sees him and Pepper
and Rhodey, like everyone close to him, they see him like damaged and he's dying. It takes his last breath, and then Pepper says, "Just rest now." And man, I was.
Then they do that homage, funeral.
Yeah. And then we have
big funeral.
We have the funeral for him where everyone shows up. Even like Hank Pym comes back. You got the Wasp come back. You got Bucky come back. Everyone like is there, and they are all seeing his funeral and everything. And they if you remember in the trailers, it showed that thing that it says Tony Stark has a heart or whatever. They put this on this kind of bequest they has, and it's left off in the water.
Yep.
And then basically everyone pretty much has closure at this point. After that, we get Thor, who pretty much ends up giving the new Asgard to Valkyrie to take over, and he ends up going with the Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah, he ends up becoming a Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yes. And what's emotional? Well, the build up to this also, we meant to say this earlier. since Gamora was still under the influence of Thanos earlier during the battle, unfortunately, because she was still not changing sides yet, she unfortunately got evaporated again, so she didn't make it.
Yeah.
And then basically Peter Quill, he's still contemplating about losing her and stuff, and they end up going on a new mission with Thor joining them, and the Guardians of the Galaxy are back.
Yep.
And then now everyone gets, at this point, they
get all the stones and they ask Captain America to go hide them all in different dimensions and all that stuff and all that, and he said he'll be back. Well, technically he's gone like a long time, but it's only like 5 seconds in our world.
Yeah.
So they count the 5 seconds and realize Captain America's not there.
Yeah, and then basically he ends up coming back, and they realize he's not there, and then they see this guy. They see him like out where this water is by the river or water, whatever. And Falcon ends up going up to him, and he notices that he's an old man. He's like, "What did you do?" He's like, "Well, I had my last dance with Peggy." Yeah, and he basically was at peace, and he got married to her with the ring on his finger and everything, and he ends up basically passing the torch to Falcon.
Which I have a problem with, because no offense to Falcon but him and Bucky,
they were so close together.
They were so close. They were born together.
It felt like they had a bigger arc for him because we had a build up to Bucky in the last film that caused the events of Civil War and him regaining himself and everything. I kind of figured that because he had a bigger arc that was through those films, he deserved to be passed on to the torch.
I know, he hardly has any lines. He's sidelined. It's downright bad.
Yeah,
on that part.
Yeah. But yeah, he ends up basically going back to live. Well, he ends up living the rest of his life as an old man, and then pretty much we get the ending scene where he ends up going to. We see a flashback where he finally has his dance with Peggy, and it ends with them, like as we always wanted.
Yep.
And then, before that, we also see that Captain Marvel, if you notice, like in the background, she's like kind of damaged, meaning that possibly in her next film, she's not having the strength like she had.
Yeah, because there's a scene where they're fighting really, really hardcore, but he had that Power Stone knocked her to another universe. She's gone.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she was messed up.
And then pretty much since they gave closure to that, they also had Spider-Man also goes back to school and basically now sets up the events of Far From Home that's coming out.
Yep.
So everyone pretty much has recovery and everything, and this, to me, the way it ends with this, I felt was the most absolutely satisfying conclusion of pretty much the entire universe, because this movie not only celebrates not only all the other films, but they're able to give in other characters that we've seen in other movies and flesh them out, and be able to just do everything that you expect for them to close this series out of.
And basically, now that I forgot what I was going to say.
Well, basically, going back to our pros again, since the films have now ended, I'm open to all the other solo films they're doing, but I really feel like on this kind of scale, the way that they've done these type of movies with the Avengers, I don't think we're going to see something on this level, at least for a long, long time.
No, and I think this is the closure.
It is, yeah. To me, I don't really think that there's going to be another movie on this level with another one in the future.
Yeah.
Because I've loved all these movies. There's been some hit and miss over the years I haven't really liked that much, but I've still enjoyed pretty much all of them. Yeah. And the performances, they're all great. Like we said, they're fantastic. They got the emotion really down.
Oh my God!
The movie just the story just keeps you going in so many levels. And
I was a little bit disappointed in Thanos' final. Not disappointed in the battle itself. How underused he is.
Yeah, he's hardly in it because they had to really change things around with the timeline and stuff and going back, and it's just the way it's plotted out. It takes a while for things to get there with them.
Exactly.
So. Yeah, that's one of my minor things I had kind of issue with. But other than that, I mean, like, the movie really ends it on a really high note, and it really does everything well to pretty much give me, like, on the verge of tears and really suspend your disbelief on a lot of things, even though there's a lot of things that could have added more.
Yeah,
because some of the
I
plot points
personally
they had,
think
like,
he
with
should have
the-
danced with Peggy at that ball.
Well, also, like, as far as plot points, the Tesseract thing, when Loki goes back in time, or when he leaves the Tesseract when they're in the old time period, that could have been later established because we don't see him after that. So it's like
there's things in here that isn't established. So.
Yeah, and same thing with Thanos just shows up with his army and stuff, like how he time travels. So there's a lot of loopholes that they could have elaborated more based on the time travel stuff.
Yep.
But really, that's just one of the minor issues that I have because overall the movie just does everything that I've wanted from these movies to do.
Exactly.
So once again, I'm going to give the movie a high phenomenal grade on the Film Phreeks meter.
I'm going to give it a phenomenal grade on the Film Phreeks meter.
Fair enough. And for those of you who have also seen Avengers Endgame, and the other Marvel films as well, let us know in the comments below what you thought about them. And if you like what you see here, you can feel free to like and subscribe to our channel. And check us on other reviews here and our website at filmphreaks.com. And we'll be seeing you in our next review.
Later.
We'll see you later.